This is a TV show called Flashpoint. It's on the Victory TV channel, which is owned and operated by Kenneth Copeland, televangelist Kenneth Copeland. This show is full of die-hard Trump extremists. I'm talking people who view him as a messiah. That's the types of people that come on the show and do segments on it. This is Gene Bailey. He is a televangelist himself and a pastor, and he is absolutely unglued from reality, no joke. So, as it turns out, they're going to be talking about Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis and how much they love Donald Trump in this. It's bound to be interesting because right now there seems to be a massive war between Donald Trump and the rest of the Republican Party. So let's get into it. Let's see what these people have to say about Ron DeSantis. It can't be positive. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the whole thing. I have to imagine it's going to be negative. Going to be fascinating to listen to either way. I'll be interested to see what they say. And while we listen to these nutter butters spread their nutter buttery all over everything, as is their way, we're going to play some Breath of the Wild. They usually have a little segment at the beginning of this where they talk about like announcements and stuff, and it's not always relevant, but sometimes they slip the craziest, wackiest, most unhingiest of garbage in here. So let's listen and see what they have to say here.
Gene Bailey, and you are watching Flashpoint. Thank you for being with us tonight. Listen, you know what to do. You need to go share this program on all your social media. And a big shout out to all my friends at the Flashpoint Army. You guys are wonderful. You spread the word. Wherever we go, we run into somebody, their first words are usually, I'm Flashpoint Army. And I love.
Oh, God, it's so creepy, dude. Like I said, these people are like the die-hardiest of Trump supporters. So if he comes across somebody just in the wild yelling Flashpoint Army, you're an extremist by default if you watch this TV show. Just based on the things that they believe and do and espouse. And they're also, in my opinion, domestic terrorists. Some of the things that they say directly lead to, like, mass and stuff. Seriously, that's the kind of place that this TV show is. It's absolutely unglued from reality. I'm not exaggerating. Let's keep listening.
Love that. We love meeting you, love talking to you. And if you're not yet signed up, it doesn't cost you anything to be a part of the Army. You just go to govictory.com/FP sign up and give us your email address, preferably not a Gmail or a Yahoo, since we're still working with that.
Oh, yeah. They've got this whole thing going on right now where they're convinced they're being persecuted by Gmail and Yahoo because their anti-spam, like, detectors keep detecting Flashpoint's emails and like, picking them up as spam because they're constantly asking for donations and stuff like that. Kind of amusing, if you ask me. But, yeah, these people will find any opportunity to turn themselves into victims. So,
and go sign up and get your name on and get an email every week from us, one, maybe two. And we know that many of you are still not receiving your email. So we're working on a way to address the suppression that we're dealing with and you're dealing with. But
help, I'm being suppressed. Isn't that from, I think that's from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, right? Help, I'm being suppressed.
You can still go to the website and view each week's email at govictory.com/flashpoint. You can see it right there every week. Okay, so thank you for doing it. All right, special welcome back to the program today. My co-host panelists, Pastor Hank Kuhneman and Lance Wallnau. That's a snappy tie you got there, Lance.
Okay, Lance is the one in the middle if you've never seen this show before. What is with this shit-eating grin on this guy's face right now, first of all? Second, you know what? I think this is actually the shit-eating grin I used for the thumbnail. I just skipped through to look for a good spot, and boom, right there's Lance. Anyways, no, that's not a snappy-looking tie. It looks really dumb in my opinion. I'm sorry. Why wear a tie like that? I don't know. I'm just not a fan of stripes, I don't think.
Yes, indeed. It's in the spirit of, the patriotism, but also a little bit of Christmas, because it is Thanksgiving, Gene, and I think we should really be in the festive mode this week.
Yes, I believe you're right. It's festive mode. And my idea of the festive mode is watching football and eating. And that's about
not praying. He's not a very good Christian now, is he? I would, if I were a Christian, which I'm not, but if I were, I would spend my whole Thanksgiving weekend praying to Jesus. He is a terrible Christian.
About it. That's the goal of my week, to enjoy family time and food, not necessarily in that order.
Wow, so he prefers food over family. Okay.
So anyway, all right. So today marks 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, we were right here. Well, we were up the hill at the different studio, but we were right here covering the election, talking about what happened on November 8th.
Oh, yeah. They get completely melted down on November 8th and the days after, because they came out here on this TV show and swore up and down that they knew for a fact that Donald Trump was going to have a ton of victories. All of his endorsements were going to come out looking really, really good. And unless the Democrats stole it, of course. And afterward, they had to basically come out and say, no, we swear it was a good night for everybody. It totally was, 100%. And I think that these guys are kind of laying off on like the, what do you call it, like the election theft narrative a little bit. Because I believe that they've come to the conclusion correctly that claiming that there's election theft suppresses the vote heavily. Like, their voters are less likely to go out and vote if they believe that their vote isn't going to count. It's going to be stolen or something like that, right? So naturally, I think they're slowing down at it a little bit, and they've been trying to mix in some positivity with everything that they say. That's what I've noticed over the recent weeks.
And Lance, here we are 2 weeks later, and we're still waiting on some results to come in. What's the deal?
Okay, no, we aren't. What is he talking about? This is from November 22nd. At this time, we were not waiting for results. I have no idea what he's talking about. Carrie Lake lost her election. That was like the last major thing that we discovered as far as the election goes, first of all. And second, granted, we did have a long wait when we were trying to figure out exactly who was going to be, like, you know, where the Arizona elections were going to be. We were waiting a long, long time for that. You know why? You know why we were waiting so long? Because Trumpists and far-right nutcases in Arizona in 2020 made it their life's goal to make voting and vote counting more difficult. Arizona was ground zero for some absolutely unhinged election conspiracies. And they passed all kinds of crazy laws and everything else to try to alleviate the claimed voter fraud that they insisted existed, which didn't really exist. So anyway, that's why it takes so long to count the votes now, because of them, because of what they did.
What's the deal? I'll tell you what, you can see Ron DeSantis had a great little video clip where he talked about 7.7 million votes were processed in Florida. And Hank, they did that after a hurricane. And he pointed out the fact that how could we have a hurricane we got through, another one coming in, and we could get all the votes done, 7.7 million by midnight, and we're still waiting for Arizona and California and Oregon to sort. You know why?
Yeah, I do know why. Because Florida was not the center of election conspiracies in 2020. Trump won it, so he didn't focus on it. He didn't even care. He paid no attention to Florida. That's why Florida was allowed to use, like, you know, the voting machines and all the normal stuff that everybody has always used this entire time. That is why Florida counted so quickly this time around, because they were not the focus of the election conspiracies. Arizona, on the other hand, as we can see, most definitely was.
Because it's the blizzard of paper ballots.
Yeah.
The Democrats are gaming the system so bad that they just, they prolong the victory agony so that even though they know they're going to lose, they want to keep the conservatives from consolidating power with their new base. And
what does that mean? I don't even understand. What is he even talking about right now? How does that work?
Secondly, they want to discourage us. It's just amazing how actually vicious the political systems have become, and they don't reflect at all the way that the country's supposed to exist.
I agreed, and I don't understand why we have to deal on and on and on, and why there's so many of the rhinos that seem to be bought out, have been bought and paid for, that seem to keep this going.
Okay, if you're unfamiliar with the term, rhino means Republican in name only, and what they're referring to is anybody who is not an ultra MAGA Trumpist, basically. That's Trump's word for anybody who doesn't bow down on the ground and worship him and or his golden idol that he designed. Trump really does have a golden idol. I don't know if you guys were aware of this or not, but let me show you. Trump golden statue right here. If I remember correctly, some people got in a lot of shit for that in the Bible, right? Didn't they? Anybody remember that verse about worshiping a golden idol? Anyways, yeah, just saying.
But however, we're gonna end on a positive note. But I want to kind of talk about, before I get to Pastor Hank, there's a prophecy we're going to get to. But I want you to see, because immediately, of course, we here last week showed you President Trump announcing his candidacy for 2024. So he's in the race. So immediately, Lance, we started seeing from people, well, doesn't have the following anymore. He doesn't have the people.
100%. Yeah. Trump has no chance of winning, in my opinion. Now, people said that in 2016, and, their arrogance may have been their downfall. So take this with a grain of salt. In my opinion, Trump has no chance of winning in 2024. No chance.
They're not following him. Desantis is the guy. They don't want him in there. And drumming up a lot of fake news stories from the mainstream media to
fake news
say Trump doesn't. So let me show you this poll, Lance, and I'll go to this to you first. This is the 2024 National Republican Primary Poll from HarvardHarrisPoll.com. All right?
Okay, now here's what's interesting. I looked into this, apparently. My sister-in-law actually looked into it, found that this is actually from Harvard, apparently, HarvardHarrisPoll.com. It is from Harvard, despite the fact that it's a .com address. Usually, educational institutions are .edus, and despite the fact that they use WordPress as like a content management system, WP content /upload / blah, blah, blah. It's a WordPress website. Kind of an odd choice for an institution like Harvard, but that's neither here nor there. The point that this poll is making from Harvard is that Trump controls the Republican Party, but it doesn't make any statements about whether or not Trump controls the country. Trump is deeply, deeply unpopular among independents. Like, hated among independents. And you know who you need to win any election in the United States? You need independents. That's why Trump lost in 2020. He is deeply, deeply unpopular among independents. Nobody wants him. No one wants anything to do with him except for the Republicans. And only 46% of the Republicans want anything to do with him. So, yeah, apparently this poll is real as far as I can tell. But it's a representation of the Republican Party specifically, not the country. And we're talking about whether or not Trump could win a general election. In my opinion, Trump has no chance of winning a general election in the U.S. again. That's just my take. I may be eating my words some point in the near future. We'll see. That's just how it seems to me. Did you go to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day last Thursday? BTB. But that's by the by for those not in the know. How are you feeling today? A while back, Buffalo got hit with snow. Did it come your way? Sadly, it did not come my way. I'm waiting for snow. I absolutely heckin' love snow. I don't see any on the horizon. As far as like weather prediction goes, I always go to ventusky.com. I don't know if you guys have heard of this or not, but oh, dude, I love this website. So if you go over here on the left side, you will see you can select snow cover. This is total snow cover currently. If you select new from 11/29 and then change the day to like November 30th or the 1st, the 2nd, it'll show you where snow is going to be at any given moment. I am right here on this little dot right here. Right here. So, yeah, not looking like I'm going to be getting any snow anytime soon, sadly. Maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll see. But this is really good for, like, watching for hurricanes and stuff, too. Hurricane season is just about over, I think. But, like, you can do wind speed. You can do thunderstorms. This website's just awesome. So, anyway. Yeah, that's neither here nor there. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. And as far as the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, I did not go to that. I did last year, but it's really crowded. You got to be there like 8 a.m. to get a good position, and it's complicated. And nobody in New York City likes going to these big events like New Year's Eve. Nobody here goes to that shit because it's so crowded and difficult to get around. You got to wait around for like all day. It's just a pain. I would love to go to them once, at least once, and I did last year for Macy's. Maybe New Year's Eve this time. We'll see. Last year was too risky with COVID. This year is also risky, but not like last time. Last time there was a huge wave, so anyway. Yeah, thanks for the super chat. Let's continue on and listen to these people try to make up excuses for why Trump thinks that he controls the party.
This is who they say who would win is got the most support. Trump, 46%. DeSantis at 28%. And then I'm still surprised that Pence is at 7%, and it goes down.
Oh, they hate Mike Pence. Oh, my God, they hate the guy on this show. So, yeah, they're going to talk mad shit about him no matter what. The point about Pence having, like 7% on here is 7% of the Republican Party basically will vote for anybody directly opposed to Donald Trump. Currently, DeSantis is not in a directly oppositional stance to Donald Trump, though Donald Trump can't stand the guy. They don't like, they're not opposing each other is the point here. So that's probably why he's slightly higher. Trump definitely does control a subset of the Republican Party, but I don't believe he controls enough of the vote to win a general election.
Down from there. Not that all these people are announcing they're running yet, but that shows you the poll. All right, so that's that. Let's go to the next one. So let's put these against the Democrat. All right, so if you put Trump against Joe Biden, Trump's up +2, 44 to 42.
Okay, look, I don't use single polls. I use polling aggregates. I don't trust any of their numbers anyways. They said they got this from Harvard. They may have completely made these numbers up. I shouldn't have even trusted the numbers without looking it up. But single examples of polls are not useful to us. You need polling aggregates. That's why you go to 538.com, for example. They don't appear to have like an aggregate yet, that they like an aggregate graph that they have up, but you can't just take a single poll and run with it because there are like, there are polling errors all the time. You have to look at like combinations of these polls. So be very wary about looking at any single poll. Biden versus Cheney. Wow, that's really interesting. Biden is up 18 in a Biden v. Cheney poll here. This is just, again, a single poll, Emerson College. This is not an aggregate, so it's not super trustworthy on its own. Although Emerson College is rated A as far as polling goes. DeSantis would win in a hypothetical matchup against Biden in this single poll. Here's another example, though. This one is different. DeSantis is up 2 in this one. Trump Sr. is up 3. Trump Sr. is up 2 in this one. It depends on which poll you're reading, so you need to look at aggregates, and it's just too early. We don't have enough people running these polls to be able to tell any of this stuff. So this stuff is not trustworthy. Just don't read into any of this right now. Plus, it's way, way too early to have any idea.
Trump against Harris, 47 to 40. DeSantis against Biden shows it actually in a dead heat. DeSantis against Harris, 42 to 39, +3. Again, that's all in a Harvard-Harris poll. What do you make of that? It doesn't sound to me, Lance, that Donald Trump is pulling up the tail end by any means.
He most definitely is. There's polling and then there's voting. Okay, and we saw the results of voting this past, just this past November. Trump is deeply, deeply unpopular. That's just what it is. They can live in their little fantasy land and believe he's not, but he's not popular. That's just what it is. I don't believe that he could win another general election. I just don't.
You know what's interesting to me, Gene, is how the narrative was just put out there. And I would dare say even our group believed it, that Donald Trump lost the midterms for the Republicans, that he...
Oh, absolutely he did. Yes, most definitely.
It was like the issue that, behind the scenes. And here's something I discovered yesterday, which shocked me, that he had 83% of the candidates that he had backed, he carried through the primaries and into victory.
Okay, that's an interesting point that Lance Wallnau is making here. God, I'm getting into my political analysis stuff now. Just picking out the most popular candidate in any given race and saying, I endorse this person, does not mean that they won specifically because you endorsed them. They were already very popular and likely to win the election before your endorsement. That's basically what Donald Trump did. In, 80 to 83% of the cases, Donald Trump picked the most popular candidate. But you know who lost across the board in the election, the 2022 midterms? Election skeptics, election deniers, and Trump endorsees by and large. If they weren't already popular for their own reasons, they lost. Donald Trump failed miserably. And I'm honestly blown away that they're refusing to accept that right now. I was wondering how these people were going to grapple with the fact that they hitched their little wagon to the Trump pony and are ready to go anywhere that Trump goes now. And now Trump is failing electorally. So what do they do now? They pretend he's not failing electorally. Okay. Hey, that works for me. I'm good with that. You guys go ahead and continue pretending. I don't think Trump's going to win another election, in my humble opinion. We'll see.
83% success rate is higher than any other president in terms of power to endorse and pull people over the finish line.
No, it isn't. It would be if it were actually real, but Donald Trump just endorsed the most popular candidate. That does not make him that doesn't give him the golden ability to whatever.
That's why he's far more formidable than anybody thinks. The media spin is that this was a rejection of Trump. The reality is it was not a rejection of Trump, and he didn't necessarily choose candidates that couldn't win. But it does speak to the fact that there is an ongoing paranoia in the left that Donald Trump can run. That's why Merrick Garland is trying to sabotage him and bring in a special counsel and get him involved with another, slanderous Russia investigation type.
Okay, this Russia thing that he's talking about, that's not what's going on right now. Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, if you're watching this 5 years in the future, basically appointed a special counsel to investigate Donald Trump. That's actually what happened because he stole documents from the White House, classified documents, first of all. And also he appointed him to investigate Trump for his involvement in January 6th. That's a pretty big deal. And they're right now already setting the tone, setting the narrative with it, trying to make it seem like this is all a big, hoax to hurt Donald Trump or whatever. It's all nonsense, of course. And it's not going to work. Special counsel's already been appointed. I don't really care what they think about it.
Type thing. Because somehow they fear Trump. He is still the populist outsider that can flip the tables.
And they're trying, I heard tonight on the drive-in talking about looking for 6 years of tax returns.
They're not looking for 6 years. They got clearance. The House, I think, got clearance from the Supreme Court, I think, to get copies of Trump's tax returns. I don't even remember now. It's for some other investigation that's unrelated. Yeah, Trump got himself involved in a bunch of really underhanded, dirty stuff. Is it really any surprise that, like, it's coming back to bite him now?
The guy's been out of office for 2 years, and here we are right back at it.
We're not right back at it. These investigations been going on for a while. He got himself involved in dirty stuff.
Let me show you this tweet from the Oversight Committee. President Biden and Democrats' out-of-control spending created record inflation that's hurting Americans. Now, the Democrats voted to hide Treasury's inflation impact analysis, documenting their spending spree. This is from Representative James Comer of Kentucky. We'll keep pursuing oversight and accountability. Here's the clip. Watch.
Yeah, everything that comes out on this show is propaganda, pure, unadulterated propaganda. So don't trust anything that they say or show you without looking into it yourself first, directly. I don't know this for a fact, but some clips that I've seen, I felt like they completely fabricated. They've like shown clips from people. They claimed they were one person when they were not. There's somebody completely different. They dug up old clips from like 2005 and made it seem like they were more recent. I mean, they lie about things constantly. So don't trust a word out of their mouths, basically, is the point.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution of inquiry directs the Secretary of Treasury to send to the House of Representatives inflation impact analyses she possesses documenting the Biden administration's reckless and out-of-control spending. I absolutely support this resolution. Unfortunately, under the Biden administration, everyday Americans are struggling to afford groceries, rent, and energy in ways not experienced in decades. Thanksgiving will cost families about 20% more this year compared to last year.
Okay, Thanksgiving will cost more than previous years, and you know why? It's because of inflation, certainly, but inflation is higher than normal right now, worldwide. It's not just a United States problem. Nobody of any reputability, I haven't heard a single person suggest, any kind of economist, suggest that it's because of Biden's monetary policy. Rather than, most of them say it's like supply chain issues, among other things. And like I said, it's a worldwide problem right now. It's not just a United States problem.
Throughout this Congress, as inflation continued to tick up month after month, Democrats spent more and more taxpayer dollars, trillions of dollars worth it.
Wait, Democrats spent trillions of dollars recently? When? On what? What's he talking about? Does he have any idea how much $1 trillion is? That is a lot of money. I think the deficit, the budget deficit right now, might be $1 trillion. I'm not sure. That's not super unusual. It's been way, way higher historically among Republicans than it has been under Democrats. And we're trying to get ourselves out of a worldwide crisis at the moment. So it would make sense that it's on slightly on the higher end at the moment. But I honestly have no idea what he's even talking about anyways.
First, there was the alleged COVID relief slush fund they shoved through using reconciliation. That cost almost $2 trillion. And
COVID relief slush fund. Okay, does he know what the term slush fund means? Who is using this slush fund, does he think?
a lot of that COVID relief money is being used for just about everything but COVID relief. We warned against that when Democrats refused to put in any guardrails or strings attached.
Complete nonsense. What is he even talking about right now?
But don't worry, we're going to start doing a lot of oversight in January of how this money was spent and misspent. It's long overdue.
Does he think that Democrats are just like writing themselves checks right now? Like the Democrat senators and like other congressmen are just sitting around like writing $7 billion checks to themselves and their own companies right now? Who is this guy anyway? This is complete nonsense.
Next, Democrats pushed through a giant infrastructure spending bill. Again, hundreds of billions of dollars being shelled out when...
Infrastructure bill. What monsters, right? Who would do such a thing? To think that somebody would spend money on infrastructure. Absolutely disgusting, right? Something that Trump actually ran on and never did. Remember those campaign promises Trump constantly talks about? Never saw the results from that one.
The American people are suffering under the weight of inflation. They then passed the ironically named Inflation Reduction Act because it does not reduce inflation, but it does spend hundreds of billions more taxpayer dollars. And what's worse is the Democrats knew that all this spending would contribute to inflation.
No. I mean, he's correct that spending can contribute to inflation. Actually, spending doesn't necessarily contribute to inflation in this specific situation. There are some things that could contribute to it. Printing money would definitely contribute to inflation. You know how you avoid that? Raise taxes to account for all of the spending that we're doing right now in the United States. This is really getting into the weeds as far as like monetary policy goes and stuff, but the point here is that this guy is completely full of shit, of course.
Liberal economists warned about it. Larry Summers warned multiple times starting in February 2021 that President Biden's spending was dangerous to the economy. And even congressional Democrats knew their spending was harming the economy.
He has no idea what he's talking about.
Representative Jim Clyburn recently...
No, you know what? I take it back. He does. In my opinion, he knows exactly what he's talking about. But he's misrepresenting the facts. He's not giving us information. He's omitting stuff from this whole explanation to avoid the logical conclusions and lead us to the conclusions that he wants us to come to.
They admitted that they knew government spending for these alleged recovery programs would drive up prices. What an astounding admission.
All right.
Yeah. So spending on stimulus packages and forgiving student debt most definitely would raise inflation, but it may be worth it in the short term to try to dig us out of the hole that we are in. There are valid reasons to spend to try to get us out of a tough situation. And as a matter of fact, that's exactly what Donald Trump did. He issued COVID stimulus money to people after trying to get his name on the checks that were sent out unsuccessfully. He sent out COVID stimulus, and that raised inflation a lot. But it was necessary. People couldn't work. It was important that people had that money. Yeah, inflation would go up a little bit. That's true, but it was worth it. There are some situations that make some things worth it. But, you know, he's going to keep propagandizing and twisting it around and blaming Democrats for every one of society's ills, of course, while omitting relevant information to the conversation. That's just who that guy is.
All right. So, Pastor Hank, you see that James Comer kind of did a quick recap of what's happened. You know, the COVID money that didn't really go to COVID.
I need evidence for that. What do you mean COVID money didn't really go to COVID? What's he talking about? COVID is not a human being. Of course it couldn't go to COVID. It went to alleviating problems that people were experiencing as a direct result of the COVID pandemic. What does he mean didn't really go to COVID? What's he talking about? They're trying to set a narrative right now. This is how propaganda works. You just start claiming something all willy-nilly, and if you say it enough times and loud enough, people start to believe it. Boom, just like that. Especially gullible suckers like the people who watch this TV show right here.
Inflation Act, that all it did was increase inflation.
Okay, the Inflation Act did not increase inflation. He has no idea what he's talking about if he believes that. I'm not convinced he even does believe it, though.
What are we to take going forward with this administration?
Well, first of all, I think you've got to go back to something that God said in 2019 when he began to prophesy about the decade of differences, what the Lord talked about.
Okay, when he says when the Lord began to prophesy in 2019, he's talking about when Hank Kunneman tried to prophesy. Nice little thing you tried to slip by us there, Hank, but nobody actually believes you talked to God. Well, some people do, I guess. Is that an AirPod in his left ear? It's like off color. Kind of weird.
2018, the Lord spoke and said there would be a plague. He even spoke about China being involved in it. But then in 2019, he said there's going to be a decade of difference, but it's going to start off harsh. And what that gentleman was just describing is the harsh conditions that this Biden administration has brought to the American people, there's been a lot of harshness, there's been a lot of suffering, but here's the good news.
Okay, Biden brought a lot of harshness and suffering to people in 2019. Is that what he's saying? He said 2019 would start off with harshness, and Biden brought harshness to everybody. I feel like that's what he's trying to lay on us right now. Is it just me?
That prophecy also said that it would start off harsh, but it would come into rest. Pastor Jen, I want to just take a moment to just kind of follow back up to something that you had asked Lance regarding the midterm.
Oh, please do.
And I appreciated Lance's comments because the Lord spoke very clearly about this midterm would be a mark that we could begin to put our faith in, our hope in, and see an expected end. And it was this, you know, the Lord through our ministry never prophesied a red wave. That's not to say, you know, if you
okay. Look, Hank said this before, too. I don't know if Hank actually did prophesy a red wave in 2022 or not. I'm not sure. I don't watch the guy closely enough to know for sure if that happened. But something I can tell you is that he didn't push back when all of these other televangelists made these claims. He repeated these claims a lot from other televangelists by saying, well, you know, I don't know. You know, Kenneth Copeland says there's going to be a red wave. God spoke to Kenneth Copeland, and he told Kenneth Copeland that there's going to be a red wave, blah, blah, blah. Maybe Hank specifically didn't hear from God, quote unquote, that there's going to be a red wave, but he most definitely heavily implied it. And he's trying to back out of that now because it didn't happen.
Tallied up all the votes, and got rid of all the stealing. Would there have been a red wave? That's not the point. He didn't speak it through our ministry because he didn't want that to be a diversion. He wanted people to focus on what he did say. And he said,
okay, God is not speaking to you, Hank. I'm sorry.
That you and I and others would look at the midterms as a reference point politically. But he was looking at it for a reference point to interject divinely to cause it to be a mid-turning or God's terms that would...
See my cup? No, you don't. There's no cup here. There's no face here all of a sudden.
Begin to shift this nation towards what he prophesied in 2019, and that's rest. Now, let's further. You mentioned about President Trump, you know, and the different, you had the different, you know, I guess, polling there. And it's amazing how whenever it comes to a Democrat candidate, notice how close they are, which is ridiculous. Okay, nobody's going to take the Democratic candidates with the harshness that they've brought and the suffering to innocent people in America. But here.
Okay, well, first of all, oh my God. Democratic candidates did not bring harshness and or suffering to the world or whatever. It's completely made up. Second, the vast majority of people recognize that as completely made up. Nobody actually, or very few people agree with Hank's conclusion that, you know, Democrats are destroying everything. This is a hard right extremist take. And the Democratic Party, as far as I know, makes up a majority of the U.S. population, or at the very least a plurality, if they're not a majority. There are certainly more Democrats than Republicans. And just about the only reason Republicans ever win elections or have any kind of serious say in government in the United States is largely because of the way we draw districts. If you look at a map of the United States and how many districts are red versus how many are blue, something like 93% of the country looks red, with tiny little blue pockets all over the place, just kind of scattered all about. In reality, well over half the country votes blue every single time. It's just the way it looks, the way that the Republican districts are organized makes it look as though there are way more Republicans in the country than there actually are. But okay, let's keep listening to Hank here.
Here's the point. God is clearly said something, and that is this, and we see a prophetic sign with Netanyahu in Israel. For 5 years, God prophesied, I'm not done with Netanyahu. I'm not.
Yeah, Netanyahu's a far-right extremist who wants an ethno-state in Israel. He was the Israeli prime minister for a while, years, I believe. And they kicked him out by forming a coalition of different parties. They have like 100 political parties there. And the only way you get anything done is if these parties join together to accomplish the same goal. And a bunch of parties who would agree on pretty much nothing other than they wanted Netanyahu out. They all joined together and agreed to get Netanyahu out for a short time. But it looks like Netanyahu's on his way back in. I think he's already prime minister again now, which is a shame. Again, he's a hard right extremist.
Not done with Netanyahu, and he kept prophesying it, even in the midst of others that were pushing back, saying, oh, but don't you know they have all these corruption charges, accusations, they're trying to frame him.
No, he was a scumbag. Is, currently. Yeah, lots of corruption charges and stuff. Absolutely, he's terrible. Netanyahu is the absolute worst. So what Hank Kunneman here is saying is that God told Hank that Netanyahu would be back. Okay, do you have any evidence for that, first of all? And second, even if he did make that claim, that's not an extraordinary claim. You're making an extraordinary claim right now. Your extraordinary claim is that you speak to God directly, or God speaks to you. He delivers information to you. That's pretty serious. I'm going to need extraordinary evidence to accept such an extraordinary claim. And what evidence does he provide? He claims, the occasional thing that could have been guessed. You have to give me something that couldn't have possibly been guessed if you want me to believe you. Like, you give me specific dates, specific times, specific names, and you write it all down on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, mail it to me, and in 5 years I'll open it. And if over the course of those 5 years you got every one of those specific names, dates, times, places, everything correct, I would start wondering if something, miraculous was happening here. Anybody could have guessed that maybe Netanyahu would be back at some point in the future. That's not miraculous.
God said, I'm not done with Netanyahu. Netanyahu is back in office. In the same way, God said, I'm not done with President Trump. It's what Lance Wallnau wrote a marvelous book about, that Trump is a wrecking ball. We need this because of the harsh conditions that we have in this country. Somebody that's going to take it head on. I don't believe that Desantis has been graced to do that at this time. Not saying down the road, but here's the point. Go with the one who already has the proven fruit.
Okay, cool. Yeah, try to get Trump to run. That works for me. He will fail miserably. And, in my opinion, I strongly suspect that Desantis is probably going to run at some point and face off against Donald Trump. And, oh my God, I hope it happens. If it does happen, Trump is going to tear the party in two. He even said he's going to start a new political party if the Republicans try to shake him off. And he even named the political party. He said it's going to be the Patriot Party. Oh, my God, I want it so badly.
Also, there's a prophecy I'm looking at from May 23rd, lastly, in 2021, that talks about there's two that God has put his hand upon in the earth. And it's Netanyahu, you mentioned him first, which just happened, and then President Trump. It's the reason they attack him, because he has something given to him that's supernatural called the anointing of God.
Well,
and that anointing is what destroys yokes.
Yeah, let me show you.
So they attack people because they have the anointing of God. Does that mean that we can never, ever criticize a religious leader for being a scumbag? It's impossible to criticize a religious leader, a televangelist, or anybody for being a scumbag. Because if they do get attacked, it means that they have the anointing of God, or vice versa. They have the anointing of God, so they're being attacked or whatever. What a bizarre little loop that he found.
The people at home, just so they see an exact Trump and Netanyahu, two men who will stand strong in the earth, that word that came in May 23rd.
Oh, yeah, this is Hank Kunneman's prophecy, I guess. Hang on, let me step back so we can hear the whole thing. 1304. Okay, let's listen again.
I'm putting my hand even stronger upon two men in the earth. You'll see it, and there is celebration that is happening right now in the spirit realm as this anointing is going to increase. Their voice shall become louder, their position shall be granted and given, and it shall be stronger. I speak of Netanyahu and I speak of Donald Trump, says the living God. That's May 23rd. It goes on.
Okay, I don't understand what he's saying. Was that just it's so cryptic. It's like he's trying to sound like he's speaking the way the Bible speaks, you know? But why would God speak in, like, the dialect that they used when they translated the Bible not even that long ago? Why would he use that dialect rather than modern English? It's just so weird and confusing. Like, their line of thinking is just bizarre and nonsensical.
To say, let me just quickly, I will rejoin their hands, I will rejoin the nations, Israel and the United States. I am not finished. Now, in the interview last week with Benjamin Netanyahu, I did ask him that question. What?
FYI, I did cover that episode that they're talking about. He did an interview with Benjamin Netanyahu, or BB Netanyahu. If you want to watch that episode, it'll be on my Unfiltered channel pretty soon if it's not already. It's pretty interesting stuff, in my opinion.
Is the one thing that you believe Americans should know about you and Israel? And he said, we are the best friend America could have, is Israel. Now, of course, we those of us in the religious world would say, yes, that's right, of course. But, I mean, no, it goes much deeper than that. He's not talking about just from a spiritual standpoint, definitely that way, but it's also the economic, the what we do in Israel. You know, Lance, when we see this happening, we start to see some things come into play here. So Netanyahu's back in, you know, who seemed to be out on his ear. And a lot of people said he was washed up.
A lot of people. Who are these people you're referring to? These are called weasel words, where you're referring to some ambiguous authority. You don't know who he's talking about. What people said that Netanyahu is gone forever? Almost nobody. People expected Netanyahu to likely come back into power. But, you know, they made a prophecy about Netanyahu coming back. So they have to make it seem more credible, more likely. That's how these people operate.
We're going to be back in, and suddenly he's back. What are we to take from that, Lance?
Absolutely nothing. We're to take nothing from it because it was no different than a guess.
Well, you know, on the other hand, I was looking at Israel, Brazil, and the United States as being three very important elections, because what should have happened in Brazil and the United States would have been a resounding reinforcement for the Cyrus-type Trumpian leadership that saves the nation. And what I think we're discovering is that the nature of the corruption in Brazil particularly.
Okay, I don't know why they're carrying water for Bolsonaro after he lost his election unequivocally, fair and square. I don't know why they're carrying water for him, but it's a lost cause. And it's honestly disgusting that these people are willing to destroy democracy, not just in the United States, but across the world. They're doing it in Brazil too. It's just disgusting, dude, honestly.
Is so strong that it can divide a nation right down the middle. I mean, it's a sobering thing to think of the protests that are going on right now that we aren't seeing covered in the American press. The American press is almost like a propaganda machine. I mean, we joke about it, we talk about it, but what they don't cover is significant, because even conservative outlets don't always cover what's really important.
So this is really interesting, because I've said this exact thing about this program right here. What they do and do not cover is significant. These people, this is run by Kenneth Copeland, like this TV show here. And the network that goes along with it, it's all run by Kenneth Copeland. And you know what Kenneth Copeland has? Millions and millions of dollars. It's like a $1 billion organization right here that we're watching. This TV show and this TV network, Victory Network. They spend just disgusting amounts of money in market research and have their finger on the pulse of the American people more than just about anybody out there, because they have the money to do the research and find the answers and all of that stuff. Watching this is incredibly valuable because it tells us exactly where the far right stands, what types of strategies they're going to use to try to, capture this or do that or whatever else. It's incredibly valuable to watch this TV show and get answers to where they think society is moving in any given moment. That is why I watch this. It's really interesting that he brought that up.
But Brazil is heartbroken because it looks as though Bolsonaro has been robbed of his rightful place. But it's a divide.
No, it doesn't look like that. Bolsonaro lost fair and square. It was a close election, but he lost fair and square. And he agreed to concede, and he agreed to a peaceful transfer of power, to my knowledge. So I'm not sure why they're even bothering with all of this. And it's deeply disturbing that they're doing it in the first place.
Divided nation. In the United States, the thing that we've got to be very careful about, and I support Hank as a prophet, and I'm in agreement with all of the outcomes he's prophesying, but I don't know if the United States is yet had its awakening, because they are not resolutely seeing what the disastrous outcome of the choices that they're making. Now, I know that there's election problems. I understand the ballot phenomena. I could quote to you where the cities and counties are where it's most problematic.
There are not, quote-unquote, ballot problems in the United States. Dude lives in a fantasy land.
But on the whole, is America seeing that its drifting from God is costing it something? I believe over the next 2 years, our job as ministries is to say the unpopular thing like Jeremiah and tell the United States that don't expect God to remedy your problem for you by pushing somebody into a position to try to stem the hemorrhage of a nation that is turning its back on its own God. So I'm thinking what we really need to do is have an awakening that reminds America that the fundamental issues that a Republican runs on isn't inflation, it isn't the border, it isn't crime in the inner city. It's whether or not we'll be a nation that'll be under God, or if we're rejecting the God that has founded and blessed us.
And that is Christian nationalism right there, and as disturbing as it gets, honestly. I just can't stand how blatant Christian nationalists have become. It's really, really disturbing stuff, dude.
Because the next 2 years are going to be a referendum, I think, on the whole American experiment, rejecting God or accepting God. And we better move.
The previous 2 years weren't a referendum on, like, Christian nationalism? These people married themselves to Donald Trump as much as anybody can. These Christian nationalists did. And here we sit. They lost across the board in the last election. The previous 2 years showed unequivocally Americans do not want Christian nationalism, and they don't want Donald Trump. As far as I can tell, that was the answer. Are you guys not picking up on that with your millions of dollars in research? Really?
That issue forward, because the midterms told me that we don't have a mandate to take back authority in the nation if the nation doesn't shift and repent.
This dude is absolutely unhinged. Lance Wallnau, particularly, is one of the more disturbing people in this movement because he knows how to get what he wants, and he doesn't seem to be suckered by his own propaganda. It feels like this guy is a rational, active actor and knows exactly what he's doing, and that makes him even more disturbing and dangerous, in my opinion. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. Hey, Owen, used to be in the MAGA movement. I left because I didn't feel comfortable around neo-Nazis. I hope everything's going well. That's pretty interesting. Most people, historically, haven't really been open about being neo-Nazis. Like, most people just kind of use the talking points in, like, a veiled way and, like, dog whistle to them, right? Rather than just coming out and saying, Jews are evil or whatever. But it's like there's a resurgence of anti-Semitism to like a weird, disturbing degree lately, where especially Ye, or previously known as Kanye West, he's like resurrecting this old anti-Semitic, like neo-Nazi ideology. It's always been in the background, but he is bringing it out in the open, and that's just straight up disturbing. So anyway, glad you found your way out. That's fantastic news, and thanks for coming, Natalie Lopez. That's all I've got for you this time. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, don't forget to check me out on Patreon. And let me know if you want to see more stuff like this in the comments or on Twitter. Thanks for watching, guys.